And welcome to New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Glad to have you all here with us today. As most of you are aware, there's been a lot of discussion over the last week about last week's NASCAR Sprint Cup Series race at Kentucky Speedway. In an effort to address this situation early and get ahead of it and go ahead and focus on the racing here this weekend at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, we'd like to welcome NASCAR President Mike Helton, who will make a few opening remarks. Then we'll take some questions from the media. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mike Helton.
Thanks, Christy. First of all, I want to make sure everybody understands and it doesn't get lost in all of this talk about traffic that we were very pleased and excited about the overall support that fans showed the inaugural Sprint Cup race in Kentucky last weekend. It was very impressive and don't want that to get overshadowed. But as Christy said, we wanted to address this topic early today and assure folks that as we go through the balance of the season, and particularly starting with this weekend in New Hampshire, that this topic doesn't get lost in the shuffle. We take what happened last weekend very serious, and immediately conversations opened up between NASCAR, the track, Speedway Motorsports, from the highest of levels on the NASCAR side and the highest of levels on the Speedway Motorsports side. Jim France, Brian France, Lisa Kennedy, Bruton Smith, Marcus, everybody's engaged in this topic. And the intent is to find out exactly what happened so that a cure or fix can be determined. And we will not rest until we have figured that out. As you know, we're in that time of the year when we are working on the next season's calendar, so the timing of this is very important as we wrap up the sanctions for 2012. But it was very unfortunate that it happened, and we're sorry for the fans that were touched by that unfortunate episode, and we will not let this fall to the wayside until we get resolution to it. So with that, we'll take a couple of questions.
Yeah, we'll open it up for questions. Please raise your hand. We'll get a wireless mic to you. As always, state your name and affiliation, and please limit it to one question at a time. We'll start over here with Claire.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. Two quick things. The one is, what role does NASCAR play in making sure everything's okay at a track? Did you see this coming at all? And what role does NASCAR play in making sure things are clear sailing once a track opens up its gates?
Well, let me see if I can track all those questions and try to get it answered, but may have to help me here. The NASCAR is unique to other sports in that the NASCAR model works by the independent relationships between NASCAR as a sanctioning body, the tracks as the hosts of the events, and the teams and drivers being the competitors. And we all work together to put the events and the season on. And there's responsibility in each group's world that need to happen correctly to make the events go smoothly. In advance of the inaugural Sprint Cup race in Kentucky, there were a lot of meetings at the racetrack inside their organizations. But even with the racetrack and with NASCAR in preparation for the inaugural Sprint Cup race. Now, I remind everybody that NASCAR had been racing at Kentucky Motor Speedway for several years with Nationwide and trucks, so it's not like a brand new construction or a brand new location in general, but it was the inaugural Sprint Cup race, which in some regards takes it to a different level. And there were a lot of planning meetings, a lot of sessions that took place. Our role in those is to have dialogue and have some types of assurances that the promoters of the event are experienced and are on the right track. When Speedway Motorsports bought Kentucky Motor Speedway, obviously that facility inherited a lot of experience. Speedway Motorsports and has a lot of experience promoting races and have shown over the history that they have the ability to host cup races. And the planning for this inaugural event there tracked true to the course. What was happening was a lot of construction, a lot of new work, some of which took place after the ownership change before we went back for nationwide and truck races last year. But a lot happened between last races and this inaugural race for the Sprint Cup. So we track those along the way, and that kind of is a reliance by the NASCAR community on the promoter to host the events. And there was a lot of planning that was exhibited to us and to fans. I know on one trip up there myself, in the lobby of the ticket or the lobby of the office complex, there was material there that showed a very well thought out, a very nice presentable piece, 4-color page of the traffic ingress, and then there was another page of traffic egress that was going, according to the track folks, was being mailed to the ticket buyers and was available to everybody to pick up. And I think part of what we want to know now was that plan followed correctly, or what might have interfered with the preparation that had gone into the event to have caused what happened. I'm not sure if I answered your question or not, but I babbled a lot.
Our next question will come from Jeff.
Jeff Gluff from SBNation.com. Mike, you mentioned that you had seen the traffic plan and that it was available. What about the parking situation there? Is there any early indications that that might have been the primary culprit, or are there any theories of what might have been the main cause of what happened?
Well, and I don't want to jump ahead of us finding out the facts and speculate. What we do know, and I think it was evidenced or obvious to everybody, that there was a lot of work done at the racetrack prior to the Cup race moving in last weekend. Not just on the racing surface or around the racing surface itself, but in the parking lots. There was a lot of earth being moved out there in preparation to accommodate the Sprint Cup weekend. How all that came together last Friday and Saturday is what we have an interest in finding out.
Okay, next question from Bob, then we'll go over to Jim and Andrea.
Bob Hawk, WrestlingDaily.com. You talk about this as the time where you're talking about sanctions for next year. Are you confident that Kentucky will have a Cup race next year, or is that in question?
I don't want to speculate on that kind of thing, but I can't help but think that, you know, you look at the history of our sport, and we've had issues that happen, and we generally figure out how to work through them. And I think what we're after right now is to figure out what happened in Sparta and figure out what the cure is for it. But outside of that, I don't have an opinion at this point. But we're working toward a resolution.
Okay, our next question we'll take from Jim.
Jim Hunter, Charlotte Observer. Mike, several people have proffered explanations or comparisons talking about the first race at Texas and so forth. But is it fair to say that what transpired at Kentucky last weekend went beyond simply like opening night snafus? I mean, was it a bigger deal than just something related to somebody's first event? It seemed a little bit more widespread.
Well, and I try not to offer opinions or speculate because, but there's two things. One, we have had inaugural occurrences like Texas and Vegas and others that I wouldn't define as acceptable, but we have had them as experience. The other point is that this was not our first race at Kentucky Motor Speedway. We have had several years of nationwide and truck races there. Now, grant you, the physical layout of the surrounding area outside the racetrack was under significant changes, and so what I think we have an interest in is in finding out exactly what happened Saturday night. Did all those changes contribute to that, and did it really maybe compound the situation? Was there overconfidence from the fact that they had raced there for 10 years and not taken in full consideration of the changes, the physical changes that were taking place? Those are kind of the questions that we'll have to get to the bottom of to figure out the solution.
Okay, our next question will come from Andrea, then we'll go to Lewis and back to Mike Mulhern.
Thanks. Andrea Pelkey, ESPN. At the halfway point in the season, could you talk about competition and with respect to your decision to go to the wild card this year, how happy you are with that decision with where the wild card stands right now?
I think we like what we see. I think we like the energy around or the emphasis around what the wild card has placed on winning, and the caveat that winning races may apply when it gets closer to the setting the chase because of the wild card factor. I think that's all developing into an interesting story.